Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back with another review from Any News. I'm so glad he's continuing this because he wasn't too sure when he did the first one. He's covering the cut content for Season 1 of Overlord, which I think is absolutely incredible, excited, hyped, and let's just see what they missed from the second episode of Season 1, shall we?
Episode 2 introduced us to Overlord's core cast of characters.
Oh.
But what we didn't see in the anime
Can't wait
was a
for Season
specific
4.
focus on one of them more than the
Demiurge!
others. While we did get the
He's so
general
cool.
idea of what each of these four guardians were like,
Yeah.
there was actually quite a bit more to Demiurge's encounters.
Interesting.
A series of interactions involving him and a few other characters that marked the origins of some very twisted developments from later on.
I've heard the Happy Farm is not a nice place.
So let's continue with this Overlord cut content series and take a look at everything that we missed from this episode. Episode 2. Floor Guardians.
Awesome.
Covering chapters 2 to 3 of the light novel. With Shaltir being the first of the Floor Guardians to make their appearance. It's here that we're given an
Oh my
introduction
God, whoa.
to her lustful personality. An aspect of her design that could easily be explained by the tendencies of her creator.
Right.
It was only just speculation on Ainz's part, but he wasn't at all surprised that a guildmate whose catchphrase was literally "porn games are my life" would make such a character.
Wow, okay,
So
yeah.
he definitely
They did
put it past
seem to,
Paramount
like,
to
have
cover
the same
viral
personalities
falsehoods
or
and
similar to, didn't they?
character traits.
Yeah.
The next to appear after Shaltir was the guardian with the highest weapon
Cocytus.
power in all of Nazarick, the sovereign of the frozen river Cocytus.
So cool.
Then shortly after him was the creator of the Inferno Demiurge and the captain of all the others, Albedo.
Albedo.
Now, unlike in the anime, Demiurge had actually taken a moment to point out that there were still a few people missing.
Oh.
Aside from the two other floor guardians whose presence wasn't necessary. The Prince of Fear along with Crimson, Grant, and all the other domain guardians were absent as well. As
So he
for what
points it
these domain
out.
Guardians are, well, these were the second of the two types of
Excuse
guardians
me.
that existed within Nazarick. The first was of course the floor guardians, powerful NPCs who were in charge of defending one or more levels of the tomb. That being
Level
the
100,
case,
aren't they?
domain guardians were then more like subordinates who only guarded a single part of the
Right, okay.
So, rather than report
Domain
directly to
guardians.
Ainz, instead these area guardians reported to the respective floor guardians,
Right, cool, makes sense.
making it the floor guardians' job to relay any important information back to them. In any
Ooh.
case, the first order of
Doesn't the
business
dog woman
was to
end up
discuss
betraying them at
Nazarick's
some point?
precarious
I remember
situation.
seeing that in something.
One by one, each guardian went on to report the lack of any strange occurrences during the time of their teleportation. Since the 4th and 8th floor guardians weren't there though, Albedo had volunteered to investigate those floors on her own.
Right.
It
Where
was
are
an
they?
offer that Ainz had
Lazy
readily
buggers.
accepted, but not before first cautioning her to be very careful on the 8th. To put it in his own exact words, he said that if something happened there, it's possible that she may not be able to deal
Oh
with
god.
it. So, if that's the warning that Ainz is giving to one of the strongest
Gee, yeah,
demons
they're
in
all like,
Nazarick, then
yeah.
it kind of makes you wonder what exactly it is that awaits any person unfortunate
Yeah,
enough to
what
make it there.
are they walking into?
Now, it's after this that Ainz
Jeez.
briefly discusses the hierarchy of power within Nazarick. I know I've gone through it many times before, but allow me to reiterate it one more time for any new people.
Go for it. I like a
As
recap.
explained by Ainz himself, there were only 4 NPCs in Nazarick who possessed absolute superiority in their respective fields of combat. Cocytus had the highest attack power when armed.
Of course, look at him.
Albedo possessed the highest defenses in general, and Sibas was the most proficient in combat.
Oh my god.
especially when in his
Dragon form.
But
He has a
despite
dragon
the
form.
triangular dynamic that these three shared, the one that stood above all of them was Shaltir.
Shaltir.
She alone was an unstoppable force that none of the others could handle by themselves. Shifting over towards the
Hence why it's such a big deal that
it was clear to Ainz that a
Ainz has to
system of
fight her.
shared information was needed now. So, in order to make that happen, Ainz had placed both Demiurge and Albedo in charge of implementing it. What's interesting to note about this order, though, is that once again the 8th floor was kept exempt from it. In fact,
What's there?
the time it took Ainz to consider the 8th floor's position in the overall plan resulted in him deciding to revoke Albedo's initial order to investigate it.
Oh.
As of now, the 8th floor was off limits to anyone who didn't have express permission to enter
Oh,
it.
that's sick. What's
Permission
that?
that could only be granted by Ainz. As for the 7th, 9th, and 10th floors, well, Ainz went on to order the removal of the seals that prohibited the lesser minions from traveling between them.
Oh, okay, let them
A
go
decision
anywhere they
that
want.
not only shocked both Demiurge and Albedo, but also highlighted just how serious the situation was. The reason why this is because minions weren't the same as the guild-created NPCs. They were simply mobs and monsters that...
Yeah, they don't
automatically
think for
spawned.
themselves, yeah.
A very basic line of defense that came with the tomb
They just
itself.
follow orders.
So, to let such inferior creatures walk around in the same space as that of the supreme beings, well, that was something that just didn't sit right with Demiurge or Albedo. Now, after Ainz had left, The reason the Guardians were so enamored by his presence was mainly because of the despair aura that he emitted while around them.
Oh, right.
Normally, this type of skill wouldn't have had an effect on any of them. But because Ainz was holding the staff of Ainz,
Oof.
the buff he received from
Amplification.
their status on all of them. That's why every single one of them had kept themselves in a submissive position all the way to the end.
Damn, alright, okay.
They couldn't even dare to stand up and face the overwhelming power in front of them. Moving on to Demiurge's discussion with Mare. There was a little bit more to his fascination with breeding than what we saw in the anime. Yes, he was curious to see who would be the best in terms of making an heir for Ainz, but that wasn't the only option for when it came to increasing Nazaric's forces. There were a few other candidates Demiurge could think of that could potentially be useful in a set of breeding experiments.
No. Oh, that doesn't sound nice.
So, since this was something that Demiurge
Breeding experiments.
he literally asked Mare if he wanted to try making some babies. There wasn't anyone in the tomb that he could do it with, but there was always the possibility that there could be someone from outside the tomb.
Oh, no.
Perhaps a human, dark elf, or any other closely related species. Of course, Mare didn't yet fully understand what Demiurge meant by this, but if it meant that he could be useful to Ainz, then he was more than happy to do whatever Demiurge asked of him.
Oh, mate.
That said, Demiurge knew that such a project would require some serious preparations. Not only would the increase in population result in a higher upkeep cost for the tomb, but any mistake would result in a scolding from Ainz himself.
Of course, yeah, I don't want to mess up.
So, rather than take the risk of bringing more people into Nazarick, Demiurge planned to instead bring any and all captured subjects to a ranch outside of Nazarick.
The Happy Farm.
Independent from the tomb.
Oh my god, that looks creepy.
Handled by him alone.
Whoa.
Switching things back to Ainz, the room we find himself in next was none other than his own private quarters. A very messy space in which numerous items, weapons, and armor were scattered all over the place.
Cool.
The reason why this is because an infinite number of items were allowed to be crafted via Yggdrasil's data crystals. A common item that was dropped whenever a monster was defeated.
Okay.
So, since data crystals were quite the abundant resource, players could create as many items as they wanted, often choosing to stock up on the ones that they liked the most.
Right, so put it in the vault kind of thing, yeah?
Was definitely no exception to this. His room was filled with all sorts of high-level equipment that he didn't
Oh, amazing.
A lot of which he couldn't even use due to his caster form.
Oh, right.
He was able to pick them up due to the amount of
That's cool. I have all this weaponry, but I can't use it because of the way I fight.
Holding a giant broadsword wasn't the same thing as being proficient with it. No.
Yeah, you need to be able to use it.
By the user's class. Now, as Ainz began to contemplate his new existence, he was able to come up with a reasonable hypothesis towards his uncanny mental stability. He thought that perhaps his newly bound level-headedness was a result of his undead resistances, one of which was a perfect defense against any and all sorts of psychic attacks. This was just a bit of speculation, but it did make quite a lot of sense since his new existence was an undead body and mind with the vestiges of a human clinging to it.
Yeah.
That being the case, the mental suppression that happens whenever he overreacts to something could very well just be his undead mind reacting to an abnormal occurrence for the undead species.
Could be.
Whatever it was, it didn't really bother him since his free will was still intact.
Yeah, nothing's affecting him from going about his day.
Was the constant fatigue that came from maintaining this grand Overlord appearance. You see, for the past 2 days, Ainz wasn't left to himself even once.
Right, yeah, because everyone's just like, oh, Ainz, we need to help with this, help with that, blah, blah, blah.
Being attended to by a group of beautiful maidens. At first, it wasn't really all that bad, but
it's like, need time to, like, suss what's going on.
So, that's why he refused any company when it came time to leave his chambers. As we saw, though, whatever brief moment of solitude he initially had was quickly interrupted by Demiurge and his group.
Oh, whoa.
While Demiurge was able to deduce that this stranger was Momonga because of his use of teleportation, the other demons were able to do so a different way.
They were boss.
What the anime had failed to mention here was that every minion, NPC, and supreme being of Nazarick emitted a distinct signal that dictated whether they were an ally or not.
Oh.
And usually the stronger that signal was, the higher the rank.
Right, okay, so obviously he's going to give off the friggin'
like Ainz, the signal he emitted
biggest.
was something so radiant and bright that not only could it easily be distinguished
Right.
from all the others, but it could also be detected from a
He ain't hiding from anybody.
That's how Demiurge's evil lords were able to immediately know that the person in front of them was Momonga. Now, shortly after Momonga had left with Demiurge, the evil lords were met by another guest. A signal they recognized to be one of the floor guardians, but weren't entirely sure who it was until she showed her face. As it turns out, it was none other than Albedo, as she was in the process of searching for Demiurge. Since Demiurge was nowhere to be seen, though, she immediately turned to the demons and asked for his whereabouts, a question that had placed the demons in a particularly tricky situation. On one hand, they'd been ordered to refer to Momonga as Dark Warrior. But
Nice.
on the other, here was Albedo not knowing that this Dark Warrior was Momonga.
Right.
So, when Albedo inquired as to who this Dark Warrior was and why Demiurge would be accompanying him, the demons weren't entirely sure how to answer.
Yeah, that's a bit of a sticky situation you've been put in there.
Making it painfully obvious that there was something they were hiding. As soon as that point had become clear, one single warning was all that was needed to make them explain that this Dark Warrior was Momonga. Had they avoided the question any further, then death would have been a likely punishment.
Probably. She would have gone mental.
One thing to note about this scene is that 18 hours had passed since the last time Albedo had seen Momonga.
Oh no.
So she was neither physically nor mentally prepared to meet him. Her hair was a mess, her clothes were dirty, and even...
Oh no, she must sort her attire out now.
her overall appearance, but it simply wasn't an image that she was prepared to present.
Yeah, she didn't want to see it.
Especially
like that, yeah.
since to her it had been such a long time since the last time she saw him. As she ordered the demons to prepare a bath and fetch her clothes, they actually had a suggestion of their own in mind. They thought that rather than spend all this time getting ready and potentially miss Momonga, perhaps it would be better to show up as is and showcase all the hard work she'd been doing. Since her beauty wasn't ruined at all in any way, there wasn't really any reason to prepare herself.
That body pillow.
So, despite this being such an outlandish suggestion, Albedo did agree that this may actually be the best course of action. She just needed to verify that this would in fact get her on Momonga's good side. This wasn't really that important of a scene overall, but it does explain how Albedo knew where to find Momonga towards the end of the episode.
Okay, yeah.
In any case, it was
Makes sense of things.
happening that Ainz was in awe over the clear night sky that he'd never
Beautiful.
seen.
Beautiful.
Because the previous home of Nazarick was a dark, cold place known as Helheim,
Oh.
the only thing he'd ever see in-game was a dark, clouded night that lasted forever.
No stars.
Then, since his real-world home wasn't that much different,
Whoa,
this was the
yeah,
first
it's
time
messed
in
up
which
in the
he
future,
could
innit?
truly look up to the sky and see it as
Nice.
it was supposed to be seen.
That's cool.
As he was about to cast a spell to enable flight,
This
he
guy
quickly
quoted so
realized
good.
that his armor wouldn't let him. Yes, there was a skill that enabled magic users to cast spells while in it, but that wasn't a skill that he had learned how to use. So, with only 5 spells being currently available to him, any others would require certain items or charms in order to be cast.
Right.
That's why we see him use the Birdwing charm in order to fly. The instant he got up into the air, memories of his old guildmate flooded into his mind as he remembered how much he would have loved to see this.
Aw.
The reason Blue Planet had even started playing Yggdrasil in the first place was mainly to experience sceneries like this that were no longer available
In the real world,
It was a
damn.
fascination
Bit
with
depressing,
nature
isn't it?
that went so deep that most of his time in-game was spent recreating the night sky on the 6th floor of Nazarick. This was the ideal world that Blue Planet had envisioned and come to realize in the game of Yggdrasil. A world that Ainz wished he could see right now. Now, when Demiurge had come to interrupt this sentiment, there was actually a brief moment... in
No
which
nice
Ainz
moments
had
for
become
you.
frustrated with him. This sudden outburst had made him feel as if his precious memories were being trampled on.
Rah.
Especially since they went to imply something as childish as world domination. Though Ainz decided to play along with it as a joke, Demiurge, on the other hand, went to perceive it differently.
Okay.
And because Ainz was so enthralled with the sight in front of him, not once did he turn around to see that Demiurge actually believed him to be serious.
Oh, right.
Had it been anyone but the smartest being in Nazarick, then he definitely would have made sure to clarify that he was joking. But because this was the ever-insightful Demiurge, Ainz truly believed that he would understand
Wow.
his true intent,
Sick.
thus marking the beginning of a long downward spiral of even more misunderstandings. Now, one last thing that wasn't really mentioned...
World domination, you say? Let's do it.
...was the level of caution
Alright, high
Ainz
five, yeah,
felt was
woo.
needed when it came to concealing Nazarick. Because the process was clearly going to take several more hours, an early warning system was set in place to detect any sentient being that came too close. It was a minion-based detection system that would instantly alert Demiurge should anything come within a 3-mile radius. Despite this being extremely discreet, though, Ainz still felt that another system without the minions was also needed. Sort of like an extra precaution should anything slip through the gaps. The reason why he wanted to be so careful was mainly because he wasn't sure how strong the people of this world was. If there was even the possibility that any outsider could be over level 100, then their best defense against that would be through concealment. That was the only surefire way that a potentially fatal conflict could be avoided.
Right.
But yeah, that's pretty much
That
it
was
for
cool.
what we missed from episode 2.
Link will be in the description to the original video. Go over there. Leave a like, because I want to see more Overlord cut content videos. I think it's boss, because it's where his cut content series started, was the Overlord stuff. He did a season 3 cut content video, and then that was it. And then because he did all the characters and that, and then was it Goblin Slayer, Marvin Goblin Slayer, or Rising the Shield Hero, or can't remember, but he's done quite a few. But yeah, I really like that. Thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video I upload, link is in the description to the Patreon page. $1 a month is all I have to help support the channel. Greatly appreciated. Thank you very much for that, guys. And thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. And I'll see you guys, all you guys, next time. Bye.